Welcome to the Two Disabled Dudes podcast. We believe life is about how we react. Welcome back to the Two Disabled Dudes podcast. We are so glad you're listening today. We have had such a blast in Season 5. There is one more episode in this season after this, and we're sad it's coming to an end, but we're looking forward to Season 6. Between seasons, we're going to be working on a couple of ideas, and we certainly hope to see you on social media because the action there definitely will not stop. We also really hope to have the chance to see you at an upcoming in-person event. Holy cow, Sean. How awesome is it going to be in person again?
Finally. Yeah, it's been a long time coming. We do have a new friend joining us today, but before we introduce him, with May being FA Awareness Month and Friedreich's ataxia being the disease that Kyle and I live with, we thought we'd raise some awareness for FA today and just talk about some of the things that are important to us or that we've experienced over the years. And so I've dubbed this the 5 things I wish everyone knew. Kyle, are you ready?
I am so ready for this one.
All right, number 1. I hope, and I think a lot of people realize this, some don't, but disability for me just means I do things differently than most. Things are hard. They're not impossible. Number 2, it's actually a hardship when people jump up or jump in to hold the door once I've already started opening it. You know, with the balance issues, I've accounted for that weight.
Right.
And when somebody jumps in or runs over and like pulls on it or holds it, that actually causes more of a struggle than people realize. Now, I know everybody's well-intentioned, but it's just one of those things that you probably wouldn't think about unless balance were an issue for you.
Right. You're like basically leaning on that door and then someone comes and pulls it out from under you or whatever, right?
And it can only make matters worse. So,
yeah,
I would encourage people to maybe ask before they jump in. So, do you want me to get that? Or some sort of warning that you're about to grab it or mess things up. So, a third one is when people that I'm walking with, I think they slow down on purpose, thinking they're being nice or they're like trying to connect with me. But it actually makes things harder when you slow down and walk either right next to me or right in front of me or wait for me. I would much rather you be nowhere near me as we're walking. So don't feel the need to slow down. At least for me, Kyle, and I tend to anticipate people's rhythm and movement. And when they kind of stop and go, I know they're doing it out of consideration for me, but without realizing it, they're actually making it harder.
Yeah, you have to anticipate because the reaction, you have to like predict what your body might need to be doing in the next few moments, right? You have to think ahead a little bit.
And I don't know that we talk about it a whole lot, but reflexes are shot in an FA patient. So that reaction you speak of, it's a whole lot harder and slower for us to respond correctly without overdoing it. Physically. Another one when it comes to walking, I don't know if it's a thing of anxiety or if it plays into that anticipation that we just talked about, but when somebody walks right behind me, like maybe they're in a hurry and they're just waiting for their opportunity to get around me, whether they're with me or not with me, but if you're like right behind me, that actually...
Right on your heels, huh?
Yeah. And finally, I would encourage everybody to ask questions. Be curious about your concerns and not accusatory.
It's just, it's a little bit of a nuance, right?
Yep.
I mean, you can be inquisitive in quite a few different ways, and you just got to make sure your intentions are correct.
Yeah, I totally get it. When you see somebody walking around with FA, the easy assumption is, oh my gosh, this guy is drunk. Or, under the influence of something. I guess to an extent, I get it. That's a fair assumption. But that doesn't make it right just because it might be fair or common. So I'd encourage people to ask questions first and then respond accordingly.
I feel like that's a good thing to do in all situations. Approach everything with
some
an inquisitive mind until you understand what's going on. Then you can start to draw conclusions.
Yep. I'm sober until proven drunk. All right, so there's my 5. Kyle, what 5 things are you wanting to share today?
All right. My number 1 is I don't view myself as disabled. Like, that's not the first thing I think of when I think of myself. I don't wake up every morning and go, oh darn, I have Friedreich's ataxia again. I think, that's something we've talked about on the podcast before, but I'm more concerned about the stuff I have to get done in my day rather than, oh shoot, I have the FA.
Sure.
The second thing is, how about the fact that a sneeze is like one of the most dangerous things in FA.
Oh man, that's funny.
Like, I've seen people, and I've done it myself. Oh, I even talked about it on the podcast, is that, I'm standing at the sink and I sneeze.
Oh, that's
and I,
right.
hit my face on the sink. And, so...
Dude, tell me, before we move on, 100%, and I know a lot of people can relate.
Yeah.
What's it like when you feel a sneeze coming on while you're driving?
Well, usually I release my grip on the wheel a little bit so that when my body goes insane for a second, it doesn't steer off the road.
Sure.
So, there's a few things, but that's...
Yeah. I don't know what it is about a sneeze and being in the car, but that's when I get super nervous, is when I feel it coming. Especially if you're like on a little turn in the freeway or something.
Yeah, that's a good point. Like if you're on a turn, you can't relax your grip on the steering wheel. Yeah.
We probably shouldn't talk too much about that. I feel like somebody's going to report us and get our licenses revoked or something.
My third one is just a realization again about how I see myself and how FA fits into my life. Really, I hesitate to say this, but sometimes I'm grateful for FA. I think a lot of people spend their whole lives searching for their purpose. All of us do. But I feel like partly my purpose was handed to me in the form of a diagnosis of FA. And to a certain extent, I hope we can all see that and experience that in our lives as, different aspects of our lives are dedicated to the FA community and maybe finding a treatment and cure, but also just supporting each other in this journey. The fourth thing is FA has really given me insight into life that I wouldn't have had otherwise. Just the fact that we only have one life, and I feel like I don't want to waste as much time because I know it's limited. It's always in our face that, maybe our lives are going to be shortened because of FA. So we'd better live now for today. Yeah. One thing that is not necessarily contradictory to that, but I think these things sometimes compete. The balance between fighting for research and planning for the future, a treatment and a cure may be a few years away, but then also balancing that with living for today. In the moment, and doing the things that we need to do to be fulfilled today and put the future out of our mind in a sense sometimes. That's a constant thing that I feel like we're always dealing with in FA and maybe just in rare disease in general. That is my top 5 things about FA.
Of course, listeners, we hope that at some point it's informative, but also we hope that maybe you contemplate about what's true for you. What's your journey or experience been like, whether it's with disability, rare disease, or something totally random and different. The best way to help other people in your life get more comfortable or more familiar is to share the experience, educate your friends and family. Speaking of educating, recently we had the privilege of connecting with Aaron Smith, a young man with autism who helped us learn about his experiences on the spectrum. But he also shared his Elvis impersonating talent and stories with us, and we had a lot of fun hearing Aaron's stories. We're confident you'll enjoy this conversation. Meet Aaron Smith. But here's another conversation we've been looking forward to. Aaron is not only an individual living with some different challenges, and kind of cool because this is an area that Kyle and I have not spent a lot of time exploring. So we're excited to have Aaron on as a guest, but also Aaron is incredibly talented as an Elvis impersonator. I've seen his stuff online. So Aaron, welcome to the show. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you so much for having me, gentlemen. I really appreciate it.
So Aaron, we got to start off with this Elvis stuff.
Yes.
If you're okay with that.
Absolutely.
What is this and how or why? Like, where did this come from?
See, I always say autism as my disability was a blessing and a curse. It became an obsession, and then the obsession turned into like wanting to travel and sing and be on stage, which completely fed not only that, because I get nervous if when I'm on stage as myself, but it's Elvis, so it's a character, so I can kind of slip into that character. It started when I was probably about like 9 or 10 years old. My dad and mom were Elvis fans. Watched an Elvis film called That's the Way It Is. And I just got hooked. I got hooked. The 70s is what I love, but I got hooked then. I didn't know I could. There were other impersonators. I didn't know this was a thing at that age.
Yeah. You don't have to tell us how old you are, but I imagine Elvis was already dead before you were born. Is that right?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay.
I'm 26. So
somewhere along the way, you just fell in love with Elvis and then fell in love with the idea of being able to impersonate him. And you're actually pretty good at it.
Yeah, I my first live performance at a young age, and I hate it because I was like, I want to say it was like 10 or 11. And I performed at a drive-in with like a boombox and a CD player, basically lip syncing, because that was before everybody was like, trying to, I guess, what's the word I'm looking for? It was like, basically it was just a fun thing. I wasn't taking it super seriously because it was just a fun thing. But everyone was like, oh my gosh, he's so adorable. He's so cute. And I'm like, I want to be taken seriously. I don't want to be cute. I want to be taken seriously. So obviously, as the years progressed, I still liked Elvis, but at that time it was like, okay, I could make a career out of it, but I also was in school and doing temp jobs and you're a teenager, so you're going through all that life stuff too. But in the later years, I was able to realize that there's people who do this. So I kind of tried it as a side thing, and it took off there. So from like 17 on, I've just been kind of trying to hone the craft of working a room and the voice.
Yeah.
So this is an occupation, not just a hobby.
Right.
That's awesome.
Right. Yeah. No. It's mostly a hobby, but when you get to like some of the contests and you get prize money and you can kind of build it up there, which is really, really, really cool. I just didn't know there was a platform for it.
So, have you been doing any gigs or anything during COVID, during the pandemic?
No, unfortunately, before the COVID crisis started, I was actually there's a live band karaoke place in my hometown here, and a friend of mine owns this bar or lounge, cocktail lounge. It's like very like 40s esque, and I would come down for that, and a couple people in that band, we formed a band after that. They're like, we should form something like with just you. So we did that, and we were doing a lot of rehearsals for the songs because there's different tempos. Like most of my songs on stage are the live version, but most people just know the studio version. So we were practicing to do Memphis, I believe, and some local stuff around here. And then when COVID hit, I haven't been on stage now in a year.
Yeah.
I've been in contact with the musicians, but physically in front of an audience, no.
Yeah.
How do you feel about that? Are you, has it been a good rest, or are you tired of the rest? Like, where are you at with not being on stage for over a year?
It's definitely going to make my costume designer hate me. I like it, but at the same time, I just miss that connection with a live audience. I miss the traveling, and I fortunately, my really, really good friend, I call him assistant in bodyguard because he travels with me, and he knows, especially with the disability, he knows it's like, okay, are you doing it? Yeah. He knows me. He can read me pretty well. So we've been spending time together, but it's just been weird not being in certain places at certain time of the year where normally it would like you'd be at these different festivals. And Memphis is going on with their festival this year, the Elvis Week. Now I may do that, but I'm still trying to figure out what that's going to look like.
Yeah. So in the world of impersonations, I imagine, Elvis is probably a popular one to impersonate. I feel like I've seen Elvis impersonators on the street corners in San Francisco, right? So for you, is there somebody currently alive and doing it that you look up to? Somebody that you think is like the end all be all, who you want to be like, or kind of take on traits of and so forth?
I would have to say, oh gosh, and he was one of the first people, I believe, to win the ultimate. There's a gentleman by the name of Sean Clush. There's a friend of mine who actually came to Wisconsin to play. His name is Dean Z, and Mr. Jay Dupuis. Those and Bill Cherry, and a good friend of mine who's actually, he's in Canada and he does the Elvis thing. His name is Jonathan. Those guys definitely. Sean Clush was the main one because he was the first one I ever really kind of stuck on and said, wow. But those guys, I'm surprised that the younger kids, younger than me, that new generation, that there's still that lust or that want to do this, to pass the torch, so to speak. I was actually supposed to do there's a Las Vegas, because I want to come out. I have a brother in California, but I've been wanting to come out to California. But there's a lot of places I haven't been yet that I would like to go to. But yeah, I'm in contact with those people, and it's crazy how many Elvises are all over the world.
Yeah, right. I feel like there's one in every town, or at least one.
Gotta be.
You said there's a lot of places you haven't been to yet.
Yes.
Of the places you have been, is there a favorite venue or event that you've been able to be a part of?
I would have to say Memphis. Memphis is always a great time. That's the birthplace of rock and roll.
Yeah.
Elvis's hometown. I would say Memphis because not only when, I'm on stage, I'm doing my thing, but there's never a dull moment. There's always music there. There's always, so Memphis, I'd have to say Memphis would be.
I imagine the energy and the vibe in Memphis is just very unique. Like you probably don't get that in Denver or even Vegas.
Yeah, it's very almost, you have black artists, you have gay artists, you have straight artists, you have rhythm and blues, you have rock and it's just, there's this camaraderie for the music, the rhythm and blues, country and western and pop bridging. So it's a feeling like no other. You could, any time of the day or night, you could go on Beale Street and there's someone playing music.
Yeah. How many times have you been to Graceland?
once. 2017 was my first time.
Wow, nice.
And you expect him to walk down the stairs because
Yeah.
the mansion is stuck in that period. So it hasn't changed. It was hot though. It was like 80 degrees at night. And in the Midwest, from where I'm at, it gets in the 60s at night. So I like the humidity, but at the same time, it was surreal to any time of the day or night you can walk around and there's music.
Yeah.
When you're on stage, we know you do the outfit. Do you have the moves and the dancing down as well? The lip, all of it?
It's funny. I do. Because on my person, it's funny you say that, because on my, like, when we'll be driving to a show, I like rap and pop. So I'm listening to that, but I have a repertoire down. I've split my pants probably 3 or 4 times just doing Suspicious Minds and doing the karate. So I would have to say yes.
Okay.
Sometimes I'd have to say I'd have the moves down more than I have the voice. I had a guy in my band he goes, you got the clothes, you got the moves. He goes, we need to work on that voice because that voice is so hard.
Yeah.
When you think Elvis, obviously that look and that lip, the faces he made is a big part of his signature. Do you think his lip was natural or do you think he created that as a part of his persona, or do you think that fell into a bit of a natural inclination for him?
Well, I'd have to say that I think it was a thing that he did in the movies, man, and it just stuck. Like he said, I did 429 pictures like that, baby.
Nice.
Oh man, that was pretty good.
That was good.
So I think at times it was prompted, though. I don't always think. I think he just, we have that thing called muscle memory. I think that's what it became.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Well, Aaron, I wanted to switch gears a little bit. I love that you've created this persona, like I said, the character, and you pursued it and win prizes and money. And I know that's been a fun journey for you, and it still will be for sure. But let's talk a little bit about autism and life growing up. What was childhood like for you?
Well, I wouldn't say, it wasn't bad. Gosh, going back to like super, super young, I don't remember my diagnosis, but it was difficult because in the early 2000s at that time, there wasn't much advocacy for it. I mean, I can't say there wasn't it was just kind of hard to find, like, not only doctors, but it's like, okay, well, high functioning autism, there's a completely different spectrum of it. So it was difficult trying to, I guess there were lots of therapy, lots of different doctors, I guess trying to find that social norm, because elementary school was probably, in my opinion, the toughest because, you're a young kid, kids don't always understand things. But middle school and high school, they weren't terrible, but it was just difficult because that social awkwardness made it difficult for me to engage with other peers my age. It was difficult because I'd be talking about completely different topics that other people generally weren't interested in. So I would kind of try to like do more listening than talking, just so I would fit in to those groups at that age, and also finding myself at the same time. It was tough. I would have to say, if it wasn't for my mother and my father, that said, they would go, because I was a loner. I would play video games in my room after school. I would draw. I love drawing cities and cityscapes and that sort of thing. But I was a very much to myself, just because I didn't have that social norm. So it was like I was trying to fit in, but at the same time, I felt more comfortable by myself. I did get lonely and depressed, though. I mean, my parents would always say, friends will come. They'll come. And I was like, when? Because everyone else had friends. I'm like, come on. Like, I only had, like, I want to say 1 or 2. But my buddy Sebastian, we met after high school, but I found out that his brother went to my high school. So the friendships did come now, but it's just, they always say, just like in relationships, it's going to happen when you least expect it. So high school was probably rough. The bullying was probably the worst during that middle school period and that like first year of high school.
You said back in the early 2000s, there maybe wasn't a ton of advocacy. Do you find yourself involved in any degree today? Or do you mentor kids or do anything, maybe annual events, trying to help move the needle in the world of autism and acceptance and awareness?
I haven't done anything, but I know my therapist, she's now married. We talk a lot about, because she got me into like a platform for it. I haven't done anything, but I'm always eager to bring advocacy for people with autism in Wisconsin, but all over. I follow a lot of different pages. My parents always said I should be a speaker, but no, I have not. I'm always supportive for it, but I haven't done anything. No.
I would argue you on your own point there. Part of some of the videos I saw were you having interviews or being a part of interviews that involved or an autistic sort of network. And I think that alone is allowing you to speak into lives. So I would say you are an advocate to some degree. Sure, maybe you don't show up every Saturday and volunteer to make breakfast or something at the local shelter.
Sure.
But I would say you have done some things and you probably still do them. You just don't recognize it that way.
I don't think I do either. Like for me, I guess what's always in the back of my mind, whether I'm on stage or whether I'm off stage, is making the quality of life for other people better. Especially realizing in my head going, there's got to be another Aaron out there who's going, I can do this. I just need a little extra push. So I that's always in the back of my mind is even now with technology, there's so many more opportunities out there for people that have special needs and autism and different disabilities now that I wish they had when I was growing up. I'll tell you, there's a lot more spotlight on whether it's group homes, whether it's advocacy, whether it's classes, whether it's organizations. There's just a broad tree of a plethora of things, and I just wish that came along sooner for us.
Yeah, we're definitely making progress in a lot of different ways in society. When you talk about quality of life, it makes me wonder, from your perspective or in your opinion, what would you identify as a significant challenge for 13-year-olds that are on the spectrum somewhere? What do you think is something that would improve quality of life? What's the issue we need to address?
I would say, depending on what the diagnosis is and where they're at, therapy, and not only just therapy, but also some families can't afford it. So I think, in my opinion, we need to bring advocacy towards more affordable, I guess, programs and services to help people with disabilities and medication and counseling. I guess were mine. Therapy and medication and counseling were my big.
How would you say specifically therapy has helped you? Can you give an example?
Sure. I had a lady named Tiffany, and she would come. This is probably when I was like 14, 15, 16. And she would come to the house and she would do like math, time telling, social skills training. And she did that with me for about 4 or 5 years. And consistently that helped me because it was consistent. I'm not going through the revolving doors getting a different therapist each time. I was working with her consistently. So I'd have to say repetition and consistency in the, I guess, therapy and life skills training, if you will, helped me to, I guess, learn things, but also to become more independent in the long run of things.
We talked a little bit about obviously the Elvis stuff in childhood. If we fast forward a few years to, being able to, like you said, being able to afford things and becoming an adult and having to pay your own cell phone bill and pay rent and things like that, how has autism affected, if at all, a job or career or ability to earn an income?
It's the toughest part was for the up until right now I'm not working, but up until COVID I was working retail. That was my like 9 to 5, and then the Elvis thing was obviously hobby on the side, do it where I can. I had a job coach which helped because obviously sometimes you get off task, and that helped. But the limitations of, I guess, I don't want to say how much you can make, but like the limitations when it comes to working, and then, because I do have assistance and I do get help. The limitations, I guess, of how long I can work and that sort of thing was difficult because I could only do like a part-time job. I could do a full-time job, but those hours, you could only work so many hours.
Sure.
So that was the most difficult.
I could see you being a lot of fun in the retail environment, whether you're serving food or selling shirts or whatever. I imagine your customers loved interacting with you.
Yeah, I was always in a good mood, and I loved it. I worked as like a fitting room attendant and like loss prevention type thing, and I liked that. So okay. That was my thing. And like I said, most people dread working with the public. I did some days, but 95% of the time, it was good.
Some days, I work with the public, but some days I dread working with Kyle, my co-host here. I think we're all gonna have a bad day here and there, right?
It's funny you say that. It's funny you say that because when I'm on the road with Sebastian, sometimes I just go, "Oh my God, I have to be in a car with him for 12 hours. I have to listen to his horrible rap." No, I don't. I have headphones.
Well, I think that's just a part of working with somebody. A good partnership is that you want to strangle the other person sometimes,
I think sometimes he wants to throw me out of a moving vehicle.
Oh, no.
No, I'm just kidding.
Yeah.
Aaron, you mentioned earlier that Elvis was an obsession, and I have a feeling that was partly fueled by autism, right?
Correct. Because aside from being diagnosed with autism, I was also diagnosed with OCD.
Okay. So how would you say those two things helped you, if at all, in your Elvis stuff?
Oh, Lord have mercy. I would have to say in the beginning it was challenging just because, at the time it's like, why am I always thinking about it? I would say it helped me on stage era-wise, being almost obsessed with being perfect, costuming and song choice and wanting to compete in these contests. I mean, it helped me to be diligent, but also almost like too perfect. So it's a blessing and a curse, I say, because it's like sometimes it's like I want to be too perfect. It motivated the heck out of me, though. I will say that it motivated the heck out of me to actually want to do something with it and do better with it. But also to realize that if you're good at something, it doesn't feel like work.
That relates to everyone, right? I mean, there's no one that can't relate to that statement. And I think that's one of the things that we're all seeking, and you've found it. And I think that is absolutely wonderful. And we really love hearing your story.
Appreciate that. I'm all about acceptance and just having fun with the outfits and the music. And if that can bring someone joy, hey, that's the main thing.
Well, I love what you're doing, Aaron, and I've had a blast of a conversation. You're a fun individual to chat with, and I look forward to releasing this episode for our listeners.
Thank you. Thank you very much, as Elvis would say.
Is there anything you want to add or share with our listeners?
Sure. I'd have to say that people with disabilities, we often get put in boxes. And I'd have to say that the main thing is what my mother and father and sister, my sister's a teacher, just do your thing. And, don't ever change for anybody, because people want to change you, but those are the people that either won't stick around or may stick around or just haven't showed their true colors. Be yourself, and it's okay to ask for help. It's okay to need help. And if you have enough motivation, you can reach the stars and you can do anything you want to do. And that's the main thing. So just live life to the fullest. Do your thing, and the sky's the limit as far as I'm concerned.
That's wonderful.
Aaron, thanks for joining us today and being a part of the show. We look forward to hearing and following more of you once you get back out there in the world of live performances.
Thank you, Aaron.
Thank you very much for having me. It was an honor, really.
For a guy who has been directly and significantly impacted by the COVID crisis over the last year, and as somebody who lived through terrible years of bullying and difficulty connecting with other people growing up, Aaron seems to be one of the happiest and most fulfilled individuals we've had the privilege to interview on the podcast.
Yeah, I agree. And, the thing about his personality and his outlook is that it's contagious.
Yeah.
I can't help but be more optimistic when I hear about, how he's handled his situation in his life. So thank you, Aaron, for sharing yourself and your stories with us.
Kyle, before we move into our notes of gratitude or our thank you notes, I do have a question for you. I want you to be completely honest. Don't lie, okay? Since recording with Aaron, and have you practiced your Elvis tricks yet, or thank you very much. Be honest. Have you? Come on.
I've definitely been looking in the mirror and putting up one side of my lip, and just trying to get that down a little bit.
All right. Well, like I said, Aaron, thanks for joining us today. As always, we're going to close out with some gratitude. We know if we aren't intentional about our mindset, we'll spend way too much energy on the hard things. So here are a couple things we're grateful for today. Kyle?
Well, I am grateful for the vaccine and just, I think, medical progress in general. I recently had a friend over, and we were in the same room without masks on for the first time in a year and a half.
Wow.
And I don't think I really realized it at the time, but after my friend left, I was like, wow, that was pretty amazing.
Wow.
It's I don't know, there was not that COVID hanging over the situation, and so anyway, I'm just so grateful for the vaccine.
That's awesome. Yeah, I am too, and I love that you mentioned research or progress in general, right? Even though the vaccines for COVID are the thing right now, how many other situations have we been in where we've had to tread lightly because of somebody's conditions or concerns? And I'm thankful that we still have the ability to connect. I'm going to say thank you to my friend Mondo Alvarez. He's one of my closest friends. And what I appreciate about him right now is his ability to remind me and validate my feelings when things get hard. And he's a good person to chat with. But he reminds me to look beyond those hardships, and he finds ways to help me laugh and look beyond the challenge. So I appreciate Mondo and the way that he does life with me. Thank you, Mondo.
Friends like that are awesome, that just allow us to step outside ourselves for a second and sort of observe the situation and be like, oh, I see that too,
Yep.
So it's amazing. Good deal. Well, Sean, thanks so much. Another awesome episode in the books. Check out the show notes for links to learn a little more about Aaron and maybe connect with him. We encourage you, if you like what you hear, to share this with a friend. And please subscribe on all your favorite podcast apps. Until next time, keep living with urgency. Thank you for listening to the Two Disabled Dudes podcast. This show is possible with your support. Visit twodisableddudes.com to donate.
Connect with us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. And be sure to subscribe on your favorite podcast app.